put on the, okay. Hi and good evening. So this is a Tanya class, but we're going to just start off with a little Hayom Yom as a way of warming up. So the Hayom Yom from today, which was the 27th of Adar, is that it starts off and it says, "My father said, truth is the middle path. An inclination to the right, to be overly stringent with oneself, and find faults or sins not in accord with the truth, in other words, you're too strict, or an inclination to the left, to be overly indulgent concerning one's faults, or being lenient in the demands of avoda out of self-love, both these ways would be considered false. So the truth is the middle path, not being overly stringent and not being overly indulgent. So the way of Tiferet is the middle path, and that's actually the truthful path. So there's a correlation between the aspect or the idea of Tiferet with the aspect of truth. So it's a balance between Chesed and Gevura, and where they come together is Tiferet, and that's also Avram, Yitzchak, and Tiferet is and truth are the midot of Yaakov, because he's integrating not too stringent and not too lenient. So that's our warm up. But now we're going to come into the Tanya, and we're going to be looking at chapter 11. So I'm going to bring it up on the screen, and we're going to look inside. But before we do that, I just want to do a little bit of a summary. And the summary is that we're looking at different kinds of people who are trying to do our best to serve Hashem. And the service of Hashem is that we are entrusted with the task of not letting the animal soul become dominant in our process, and that we allow the voice and the influence of the godly soul to influence and even dominate over the godly soul. So last week we spoke about the tzaddikim, and we spoke about two different tzaddikim. We spoke about a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik. The complete tzaddik has totally subjugated the animal aspect of himself, and to such an extent that it holds no appeal to him at all. And he can function not only not giving into the entanglements or enticements of the animal soul, but he's gotten to such a level that he has no temptation to move into the realm of the animal soul, number one. And number two, he actually can transform any of the energy that would come from those negative things. He's reached the level where he can completely turn it around, and his passion, his pleasure, his enjoyment all come from serving the godly soul. Number one, we said that was one quality that he has. And number two, we said another quality he has is that he serves Hashem not just for the sake of his own spiritual pleasure, which would be significant, not wanting to be separate from Hashem, wanting to be close to Hashem. So he's not serving for that reason. He's serving really just for the cosmic good of bringing down chasadim, bringing down kindnesses into the world. And the Tanya spoke about the feminine waters, which are the efforts of us down here, that we send up our prayers, we send up our efforts, we send up our mitzvot, and in turn, we bring down from the masculine waters Hashem's response that comes down and waters the world, so to speak, and shines and bestows shefa and blessing into the world. So all of us who do mitzvot, we all elicit a downpouring of chasadim. But the tzaddik has no other interest He has no selfish interest when he does his mitzvah. He's just doing it in a way for the sake of the world, for the well-being, to bring down more compassion of Hashem into the world and more light on the planet, you could say, more illumination. His intentions are completely altruistic. That's the complete tzaddik. The incomplete tzaddik, he doesn't submit to any negativity. He also doesn't hate evil with the passion that the tzaddik, the complete tzaddik does. The complete tzaddik has a passionate response to anything impure. He has a real disdain for it in a very negative way. Whereas the tzaddik, who's an incomplete tzaddik, or we call him a tzaddik veralo, he's not so passionate in his rejection of negativity. He doesn't have that same capacity to turn whatever could be an involvement with negativity into a positive action. He just doesn't do that negative action. He doesn't hate evil with the same passion, and he's not serving with that same degree of selflessness. We, on the other hand, we serve, and we want to be connected with Hashem. We want that feeling of holiness that we get. We haven't completely moved away from our own sense of gain from mitzvot. Even if we refined, our soul is not as indifferent to our own reward as the complete tzaddik. So that really was what we talked about last week. Now we're coming to talk about the Rasha, and just like there were two different kinds of tzaddikim, there are two different kinds of Rashoyim. And the same way that there's a tzaddik whose negativity is so small in him that it's completely overwhelmed by the goodness, by the godly soul. We have a Rasha and then we have the tzaddik who still has a little vestige of, it's not an attachment to evil, but it's not a complete dismissal of the evil, although he doesn't ever submit to it. Then we have the two different kinds of Rashoyim. One is the Rasha, whose rishut, his negativity, his animal soul, hasn't completely dominated over him. It has a little attachment to him, but it's not the dominating part of him. So even though he's called a Rasha, he's really a Rasha vetov. He's a Rasha in that, according to the Tanya, to be called a Rasha doesn't mean you're a disgusting person who sins all the time. According to the Tanya, if you've sinned at all, you're a Rasha. Even if you've sinned once, you're a Rasha, because a tzaddik is someone who never succumbs. So the tzaddik vetov is a tzaddik who's got a lot of influence from the godly soul. It just hasn't overtaken his whole being and his whole personality, and he has given in to sin on occasion, but it also is clarified that the way the Rasha can sin, the Rasha vetov, the Rasha who's not a complete Rasha, he can serve he can give into his animal soul in a multitude of ways. So we have three garments of the soul. We have the garment of thought, we have the garment of speech, and we have the garment of action. The Rasha vetov could give into sin just in one of those garments. He could just do something negative, but not want to think about it and not want to talk about it. And he maybe only did it once, and he maybe even did it by accident, and he's for sure having regret about doing it. So he could sin either just thinking about a sin, but not wanting ever to do it or to speak about it, or he could do it and not want to think about it or speak about it, or he could just say something but not want to and talk about something that's attached to a sin, but God forbid he wouldn't want to do it, and he doesn't want it to be thinking about it, but he felt it's okay to speak about it. So there's all different levels of the Rasha vetov. He's basically like the tzaddik, veralo. He has this little attachment to his animal soul, but he's not giving into it all the time. In fact, might be very little, or depending, there's a continuum. And he's not giving into it on all three garments, maybe one, maybe two, maybe one or two, but not his whole self immersed in that negativity. And of course, he's open to doing tshuva, and he regrets what he did pretty soon after he did it. And Hashem forgives him because his tshuva is genuine. And even if he might sin again, Hashem will forgive him again because his tshuva is genuine. He's not a tzaddik. He's trying his best, but he makes mistakes and then he regrets his mistakes. And that's probably where most of us come into the picture, although we're striving to be a Benoni. So we didn't talk about the Benoni yet, but the Benoni is, the Benoni is very similar to, the Benoni is very similar to the Tzaddik V'Tovlo, that, V'Tzadik V'Ralo, because the Benoni has mostly got domination over his animal soul. It's just a little place which is left where the animal soul has some jurisdiction, so to speak. The tzaddik varalo will never give into that little animal soul remnant, whereas the Benoni also doesn't give into it, but it's more actively pursuing him, so to speak. Then the Rasha, vetovlo, is a person who's mostly got dominion over his animal soul, but every now and again, maybe just once or twice, or maybe more than once or twice, he's given into his animal soul, but he wishes that he didn't. And then the final category of these 5 categories, and we'll talk more about the Benoni in the next chapter, which will be chapter 12. But the Rasha V'Ralo is the Rasha who's kind of lost the fight. He's so overwhelmed by his animal soul, and it has so much dominion over himself that he really can't resist the demands of the animal soul very well. And most of the time, he's succumbing to the demands of the animal soul, even though, of course, he still has a godly soul intact. It's there, but it's very buried. And so he can be counted as in a minyan. He's still a Jew. He's still kosher for a minyan, but he's not really winning the battle. He's the tzaddik varalo, and his effort at tshuva isn't even very authentic because he's so immersed in his negativity that he's not even thinking of tshuva because this animal soul has gained full dominance over him. And so this is the person, he doesn't feel remorse, he doesn't have thoughts of tshuva, so he's the Rasha V'Ralo. And in this case, the evil in his animal soul is all that remains as having an influence within him. For the evil has so overwhelmed the good that it has caused the good to actually depart from inside him. It's almost like he sent the good part into exile. And it can't really exert much of an effort. And the good is there, but it's banished, it's exiled. And so the Shekhinah still rests over this person. The divine soul is banished, but its presence still hovers and rests above his body. So for this person to do tshuva, he has to awaken the desire to do tshuva. He has to kind of bring the godly soul that is in exile back into his being, and it's a much different process for the Rasha V'Ralo to do tshuva because he's not having thoughts of it. He's completely immersed in his negative ways. And so he's very different than the Rasha Vetovlo, who really doesn't think of himself as a Rasha, doesn't want to be a Rasha, but he just stumbles and he falls and he wishes he didn't, and he's doing tshuva and he's catching himself and he's catching himself, and he has a conscience and he wants to be a good guy, but he's got a weak will and his animal soul gets the better of him. And of course, the Tanya says that there's an infinite variety of Rashoyim, vetovlos, Rashoyim who still have this good, because some of them have sinned many, many times. Some of them have just sinned very few times. But according to the Tanya, if you've sinned at all, then you're not in the category of tzaddik. So that's the very abbreviated version, well, not very abbreviated, but a succinctly abbreviated version of the definitions of the two different types of Rashoyim, and a review of the two different types of tzaddikim that the Tanya clarifies and describes. And then next week, we're going to talk more about the Beinoni. And of course, the Tanya is written for the Beinoni. So tzaddikim, we said, especially the tzaddik vetovlo, is a different kind of soul. He's so not attached to this world. He doesn't get pleasure from the world. His mitzvahs are not done for his own satisfaction. They're done for the good of the klal, the good of the world, for the sake of Hashem. That kind of neshama is very rare, and it's got the capacity to turn negative into positive and to completely redeem any negativity. It has a great passion of resistance and despair, disgust for anything evil. It's a special kind of soul. And then there's the tzaddikim who are not as elevated as that, but they still never ever sin, ever. But their disgust for the evil is not so complete, and their ability to turn evil around to good is not so evolved or developed, but still they never ever sin. Then we have the two Rashoyim, types of Rashoyim that we discussed today. And what the Tanya wants us to do is to take probably our Rasha vetovlo reality, where we want to do the right thing, but we're succumbing to the influence of the Yetzer Hara, or the animal inclination. And the Tanya wants us to get better and better at resisting that call of the animal soul, so that we can go slowly, slowly, slowly to the level of the Beinoni, which hears the call of the animal soul, is very aware of the call of the animal soul, but does not succumb. And that's why the Tanya is called Sefer Beinoni, because it's like, if you want to know how you can not listen to that animal soul, yes, it's loud, yes, it's calling you, yes, it wants you to sin, but follow the recipe of the Tanya and you'll be given more and more tools to resist. That's what the Tanya is about. And so we're going to look next time at details at the Beinoni. Thank you for listening, and all the best. Sei gesund.